All right, let me tell you a story. It doesn't start with a murder, no. It starts with a slap, an axe, and a pair of shoes so unbelievably perfect that for 2 whole centuries, nobody ever thought to ask what they were really made of. Let's dig into the terrifying history of the Paulen shoe empire.
It's a chilling thought, right? But for the legendary House of Paulen, this isn't some deep metaphor. It's a business model. For 200 years, if you owned a pair of Paulens, you had made it. They were the absolute pinnacle of luxury. We're talking royalties, celebrities, the global elite. Every single one of them said the same thing. Nothing had ever felt so perfect against their skin. And that, right there, was the secret. Because the one luxury that never ever goes out of style is the one that still remembers being alive.
So what was this glamorous empire really built on? To understand that, we have to look at the material itself, the very thing that made them famous in the first place. Yeah, you heard that right. Every single pair of Paulen shoes from the very beginning was made from cured human hide. In fact, get this, each one has a single microscopic thread of leather taken from a man who was flayed alive way back in 1462 by none other than Vlad the Impaler himself.
Okay, so to understand this empire of blood, we've got to go back, way back. Not to some fancy boardroom in New York, but to a freezing cold workshop in Warszawski, Poland during the winter of 1820.
You see, this isn't a story about some monster who was born evil. It's about a small, heartbroken young man, a guy who was always mocked for his height and his job, and all he wanted was the love of a beautiful but very cruel woman named Drusilla Kołoneczki. And then, in one single, tragic night, everything just dominoes. Drusilla laughs at the wooden ring he carved for her. He slapped her. She slips on the ice, falls backwards, right onto an axe that was left blade up. And in the shed where he drags her body, a tiny circle of her skin lands on his shoe. He picks it up, whispers these forbidden words his father once taught him, and he swallows it. 5 years later, he shows up in America, a totally new man with a very old secret locked away in a coffin. And this is the key. That one single forbidden act, it didn't just give him a rush. It woke something up, something that was sleeping in his blood, a supernatural power that made the boy who was always looked down on feel, for the very first time in his life, like a giant. But here's the thing. That power, it wasn't new. Marcus didn't create it. He just activated it. To really get where it came from, we have to go back even further, to a 600-year-old deal made in a ruined castle. So picture this. We're traveling back to 1459, to a place called Wallachia. Marcus's ancestor, a man named Antonike Paulen, was the personal shoemaker for Vlad the Impaler. And one night, Vlad makes him a terrifying offer. Here was the deal. Vlad offered Antonike a gift, a single drop of his own blood. This would give the Pomeranian family line immortality and an unmatched supernatural skill with leather. The price? Well, every generation of Pomeranians has to feed the craft with fresh human skin. And the final debt? One day they have to produce a perfect heir, strong enough to be delivered to Vlad himself. So you see, the Paulens were never really in charge. They were basically just groundskeepers for a monster. Every murder, all that fortune, every single beautiful shoe, it was all just interest on a loan made to the devil 600 years ago. And if they ever failed to pay up, their own creations would literally eat them alive. So how does this ancient curse play out in our time? For centuries, the Paulens paid their gruesome debt. But Marquis, now ageless and running this huge empire from New York, knew he had to settle the last part of the deal. He had to create the perfect heir. This is the year the end game really begins. In 1981, Marcus orchestrated the birth of a child. But he didn't want a successor to take over the business. Oh no. He wanted a sacrifice. A boy born with that same Paulen blood, but tall, strong, and powerful enough to finally pay off Vlad's final, ultimate debt. And this is the most brutal twist in the whole story. The protagonist, a man named Hunter Haley Hayden, has spent his entire life hunting the so-called Shoemaker killer. And then he finds out the monster he's been chasing is his own father. He was never the hunter. He was the harvest. He was the final pair of perfect boots that Vlad had been promised all those centuries ago. So, it all comes down to this one final, bloody confrontation in an abandoned factory in Brooklyn. Father versus son. Hunter has to face the man who created him, and the horrific destiny that was literally stitched into his own DNA. Marcus gives him this just impossible choice. He says, "Kill me, and the curse will kill your pregnant lover and your unborn child. Or put on this suit," which is a masterpiece stitched together from the skins of his victims, "and rule at my side. Become the monster you were always bred to be." Hunter realizes he's trapped. There's no way to win. If he fights his father, he loses his family. If he joins his father, he loses his soul. The evil isn't just standing in front of him, it's inside him. It's his source of his strength, his unnatural healing. So what can he possibly do? He finds a third path, a horrifying one. He takes the flaying knife and peels the cursed, mutated skin from his own arm. He physically carves the Paulen gift and the curse right out of his body. It's this ultimate act of defiance, rejecting the pact, rejecting his father, and breaking that 600-year-old chain. By destroying the very thing that made him powerful, he ends the bloodline for good. A story that began with a circle of skin being taken in violence ends with a man giving up his own to finally be free. It really makes you think, doesn't it, about the beautiful things we all want and the price that someone, somewhere, had to pay for them. For The Explainer, I'm your host, Speaker.